We are going to put live pretty soon. We have a peer-to-peer program. This is patients talking to patients. We receive training, and we're going to, if you have a need to talk to someone, is maybe you're having a problem. Maybe you're just not dealing with pH. Maybe you're just feeling lonely. Maybe you just need to talk. This program will be live pretty soon, and it'll be on our website when it is live. And it's different patients. So you can look at our faces, you can read our little short bios and say, hey, I want to talk to that one. And then you do. The other thing is we have on our website, Learn, Live. This is really great if you are a newly diagnosed patient. It walks you through pH, which is a fabulous thing because I can't speak for anybody else, but when I was first diagnosed, my thing was, what the heck is that? So learn, live, and breathe. What else do I have? We just have out a couple of days now some of our on our webinar, new pH therapies in 2024. And it has information, especially for that medicine. Tonya Zeiger, help me out with this. So
it's called Winrevair or sotatercept.
Exactly. Thank you. It has information on it. So if you want information on it or you're just going to start it, hey, check that out. I did that. Also, if you ever have somebody that says, well, what is pH like? We have a little video. It's like a minute. And it shows what pH feels like. And it's a video that just shows your heart trying to expand, trying not to. And it's a great video. So you know what? I encourage you to watch that. Okie dokie. That's the housekeeping stuff. I had seen Tonya on one of our parts. And when she was on it, she explained oxygen and everything so well. I thought, okay, this is somebody, please, that you can do this for us. And she has agreed. Yay. Because lots of us are on oxygen. I see that. Lots of us have nebulizers. Lots of us use inhalers. So now this is the time to ask your questions. You could put them in the chat. And Miss Kira Kronk, who is my eyes, my friend, my baby, she will read the chats. And also, you could raise your hand. And Tonya has said during her presentation, if you have a question about a specific slide, let her know, and she will stop and answer your question. Okay. Let's be mindful though of people's time so that we can not only have our full presentation, but that other people can talk to. So that's a biggie. Okay. Without further ado, drum roll. I'm going to introduce you to Tonya Zeiger. Tonya Zeiger can tell you about herself. So, Tonya, it's on you.
Hi, I'm Tonya Zeiger, and I have been doing pulmonary hypertension for over 20 years. We started back in the day when there really wasn't therapy other than the Flolan that you had to keep cold, oxygen, and blood thinners, and that was really it, other than hospice. So we have come a really long way, and it's really exciting to offer all of the different options we have for patients. My baby all along has been oxygenation. One of my favorite quotes is that your body can't function in a hypoxic environment. So what I tell my patients is that when your oxygen level drops below 90%, your body's automatic response is to constrict those blood vessels that we're trying to open up with all of the medications you're taking. So if your oxygen level is consistently dropping and you're not getting the oxygen you need, you're actually working against those very expensive and time-consuming medicines that you're using. So we really try to push for that.
My question is, you said that blood vessels constrict if we fall below 90. Are there any signs besides the fact that we're struggling to breathe that we should look for?
Good question. So sometimes your lips will turn a little bit blue. Sometimes it's your fingers. A lot of times it doesn't really have many signs or symptoms. And unfortunately, that kind of leads to patients thinking that they don't need the oxygen. So that's a little bit challenging. I apologize. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and see if I can make this work. Because I get that a fair amount where my patients will say, but I feel fine. I don't need my oxygen. And unfortunately, they get worse and worse and worse. And it's not until, they've really failed a lot of their therapies before we kind of can convince them that, no, this is important. This is a useful piece of information. So the challenge there is that a lot of the batteries, first of all, it has to work on a certain wattage. That's a given. But then the other part of that is that they have found that the higher the wattage, number one, the hotter it gets. And number two, usually the heavier it is. So there's all those challenges in there. And to be honest, what they're doing is essentially trying to make something that you really, really want to use. And in the process, they aren't thinking about necessarily how long the battery is going to last, which is kind of counterintuitive. That all being said, it makes it very, very challenging for the patient to know exactly what you're getting and that making sure that it's the right stuff. So I just want to go through no disclosures, learning objectives. So what I really want you guys to walk away with is kind of being able to formulate in your mind what an appropriate plan is. And I don't like the fact that I look like I'm looking the other direction, so we're going to move that over. Also, I wanted you to realize that there's differences in the portable oxygen concentrators with liters per minute versus pulse flow. And then we also want to think about some viable alternatives. So here's my favorite quote. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head, but there is no more potent vasoconstricting force than hypoxemia. Therefore, no pulmonary hypertension med can work optimally in a hypoxic environment. Like I said, as I tell my patients all the time, it's usually phrased as when your oxygen level drops below 90, your blood vessels constrict, and that directly works against all that medicine that you're taking. So O2 challenges, things that we know are happening, portable oxygen concentrator vendors that are mass marketing to you, misinformation, it's all over the place, both from suppliers, manufacturers, salespeople. Unfortunately, that leads to a lot of disappointment and anger when your provider says, yeah, I know you just spent $4,000 for that piece of equipment, but it's not going to work. We have difficulty with getting appropriate portable oxygen systems, and that is primarily because when the government started restricting oxygen companies and going to basically a managed care system for oxygen, a lot of the oxygen companies stopped carrying liquid oxygen. And liquid oxygen, unfortunately, is what a lot of patients with high liter flows need. So it kind of left us all in a lurch, not being able to get the appropriate devices for our patients. Challenges with the O2 company's reimbursement issues. Now, you would not think we would have to know these things. Unfortunately, we do. Multiple times there's different paperwork that they'll say, oh, we didn't get, the doctor hasn't replied, we can't deliver anything, we have to come pick up your equipment, and we know that all of that's going on, sadly. And then the necessity for hand-signed CMNs or certificates of medical necessity. That can delay also, because if your doctor happens to be out of the office and they only will accept a hand-signed, it has to be from the physician that's noted on that certificate of medical necessity. It can't be any physician in the office. So sometimes that too will also delay. So constantly evolving question is, what do you need to show in order to get oxygen? Your oxygen level has to be at or below 89%, or your by blood gas has to be at or below 56%. With sleep, you can still qualify, but you won't receive anything, a portable device for moving around, unfortunately. So we really here push to get you the numbers while you're up and moving so that we can get you a portable device. If your oxygen saturation is greater than 88 and less than 80 or less than 90, you may actually get oxygen, but it's with a stipulation that it has to be recertified within 3 months, and you have to have underlying heart failure proven somehow. And the physicians usually know how to make that documentation there. This is the crux, is that during the same visit or testing, you have to show that your oxygen level dropped below 89 or 88% respectively. And then they have to put you on oxygen and prove that it does not drop while you're on the oxygen. The reason being that some patients, if you have a congenital heart issue, it will not show a difference in the oxygen percent. And again, the insurance companies won't pay. So, and they require that to be within the same visit. So you can't go to your doctor's office, they'll do a breathing test and say, oh, look, their oxygen level by pulse oximeter was 88%. And then you go see the doctor and on a different day, and the doctor says, oh, well, let's put you on oxygen. Those are considered two separate episodes, and the insurance company and or oxygen company do not like to accept that. For sleep, you have to desaturate. Your oxygen level has to drop below 88% for more than 5 minutes in order to qualify you. But again, you will only get a standing concentrator. You won't get anything for portability. So here at our institution, we do oxygen titrations like this. Basically, I just want you to see, we actually show that with room air, or the 0.21, which means you're not on any additional oxygen, your oxygen percent dropped to 87%, and then the activity over there is after walking 2 minutes. We put that patient, oh, that's not cool. It says my internet connection is unstable, so y'all just let me know if something goes hinky here. We put the patient on 2 liters per minute, and you see that their oxygen level dropped in the activity section over here, that the oxygen saturation dropped to 89%. So the technician increased it to 3 liters per minute. So therefore we can say realistically that the patient needs 3 liters per minute continuous flow. So out of all of that, this is exactly what the oxygen company wants. They want the bare bones. So they want to see what your oxygen level was at rest. If it was above 88 or 89, they want to see what it was with exertion. And then they want to see with exercise what your oxygen level was. So pulse oximetry is a little tricky. I like to go over this because it's not really widely known. And a lot of times our patients, we tell everyone that we want you to have a pulse ox. We want you to be able to check your oxygen level. There are some drawbacks. If you have a problem with your, if you have a problem with your circulation in your fingers, that number very well could be wrong. If you are having an issue with anemia, again, number could be wrong. So a pulse oximeter, actually, everybody's seen the little red light, right? So the little red light is an ultraviolet, a light that goes through the actual finger, and it's looking at the weight of the red blood cell. The red blood cell is known to carry the majority of the oxygen for patients. Out of that number, it bounces back and says it's 98% saturated. From there, it does math, and it actually will guess that your other gases attached to your blood are, say, 2%. And most of them use the same mnemonic, so you don't have to worry that, you know, I use this pulse oximeter and it's going to have a different math than this other one. Usually they use the same numbers.
Tonya, I'm sorry. There was a
That's okay.
question, there was a question, I believe about the last slide, was it, Kira? From you, Kira?
Yeah, there's a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. There was a question in chat about oxygen saturation. If someone is at 90 saturation, do they still need to wear their oxygen, or only when they're below that number?
Only when they're below that number. The trick, though, is if you are sitting on your couch and you're 90%, unless your concentrator is sitting right there or your oxygen is right there, you have to get up and go to where it is to put it on. So if you're kind of on the bubble, a lot of times we'll tell patients, yeah, you can take it off while you're just sitting and watching TV, but you've got to put it back on before you get up and go to the kitchen or the bathroom. Unfortunately, you have to wear your oxygen at the least convenient times. I have patients all the time that tell me, oh, I'll use it when I'm sitting in my recliner, but I don't want to have to use it when I'm going out to dinner. That's a problem. You know, when you're moving is when you need it. And unfortunately, that's the least convenient time really to be using it. But it's the most important at the same time. So yes, if your oxygen level does drop, you need to have it on. But if you're hanging out at 90, yes, you can take it off and give your nose a break. That answer the question?
Yep.
Good. So pulse oximetry is used essentially back in the way olden days. The only thing we did was blood gases for patients. And if you've ever had a blood gas, you know it's not very comfortable. People do. I know that's an understatement. I know, I understand. So we welcomed the idea of having a non-invasive option. And as I said, while it is really, really wonderful, there are some limitations. If patients have Raynaud's or a connective tissue disease where their skin is tight, a lot of times, again, you won't get a good circulation, you won't get a good pulse flow, therefore it will not read correctly. I know the next question is, will it read high or low? And the answer is, it really depends. If it's not getting a good pulse flow, so you take your pulse on your arm and your pulse is saying that, you know, your heart rate is 100, and you put on your pulse oximeter and it's saying that your pulse is 54, then you know that it's not reading every single beat. So therefore, it likely is going to be reading higher because it's kind of, it's not hitting every beat. So it's thinking that there's more there than there is. If you're anemic, it's going to think, oh, she's 98% saturated, or he is 98% saturated, which you would be. But if you don't have the red blood cells for the oxygen to attach to, you're still going to be short of breath. So there's all of these little things that people don't think about. And my patients will call me and they'll say, I don't understand. My pulse ox is rating high. And I'll look and see, oh, well, they have a hemoglobin of 6. That's a problem. That's as big of a problem as having an oxygen saturation less than 90. Just like the oxygen saturation less than 90, if you have a low blood level as well, your heart's going to have to work harder. If you are prone, I don't know if y'all can see my fingernails, if you are prone to wearing light blues for your fingernail polish, that will definitely affect your oxygen levels by pulse oximeter. I know. It looks at it as an unsaturated blood cell is essentially how it's, when it looks, it basically is bouncing back and saying, oh, that's not a red blood cell. If you're wearing red or pink, then a lot of times it'll read higher. So that's another reason sometimes if you go in and you've got either acrylic nails or you've got a dark color, they'll ask you to remove the dark color so that they can make sure. And again, I've had patients multiple times and I've said, that dark color, I hate to have you remove your nail polish. And they'll say, what's my alternative? And when I tell them the alternative is a blood gas, they usually go, let's get the nail polish remover. So I caution people in our practice, if you know you're coming up on an appointment, just kind of be aware of your fingernail polish colors. Sounds ridiculous, but that's what we do. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt because I didn't mean to do that. From what you just said, I had went to my pulmonologist who treats my asthma, and she has said that studies revealed, which now the FDA is looking into it, that people maybe who have a darker skin tone, that the pulse ox doesn't read, the pulse ox might read higher than what you really are.
Yeah. So if you look down, cold environment will affect it, but if you look down near the bottom, for perfusion, so the very first line says pulse oximeters can overestimate oxygen levels in people with darkly pigmented skin. And that again goes back to it's bouncing off that blood cell and it's seeing your skin color thinking that that's a saturated blood cell, and it's not. So yes, that is absolutely true. And the main reason for even telling you any of this is just so that you realize that there are times when it's not a good thing to go by, and you can't swear by it. If you're short of breath, it needs to be investigated as to why. It could also be a heart rate issue, and I've had that picked up with pulse oximetries, exactly like your friend who's in AFib. I guarantee you, if she put her pulse ox on, it would say half of what her actual heart rate is. So a lot of times I'll tell patients, well, go ahead and take your actual heart rate. Does it compare? If it doesn't, then it's not accurate, but more so, we need to get your heart rate checked out.
We have a question in chat.
Okay.
Is there a difference between a finger pulse ox or a forehead pulse oximeter for accuracy?
There's a forehead pulse ox?
Yes, there is. Unfortunately, it's not available to the patient.
Right.
So that's the challenge. Matter of fact, I just had a patient that asked me, well, can we do a script for one? And the answer is absolutely, but your insurance is not going to cover it, unfortunately. They look at the little finger probes and say, oh, this is perfect. The forehead pulse ox, or we can also use them on the wrist. You can use them on the earlobe. Any of those are just giving us another option. And basically, you want to use it where you have good circulation. So if you have underlying circulatory issues and that skin is tight, obviously this is going to be one of the last places that your skin's going to tighten up, that you're not going to see a pulse. So that's the reason. And I can tell you here in our clinic, every person with pulmonary hypertension comes through, they all get forehead probes because we have a very large rheumatology population with scleroderma patients. So it's just one of those things, but it's something that you need to be aware. And if you are feeling good and your pulse ox isn't reading right, you need to just say to your provider, hey, can I come in and you can compare mine with yours and let's see if it's the same. I am a total proponent for our patients bringing their home oximeters, and while we're walking them, go ahead and put theirs on and let's see what the differences are. Because it's really all about having a consistent line of information, for lack of a better term. So you want to make sure that if you are reading from your pulse ox and you're recording in your daily journal, as some of our patients do, your oximetry, you want to make sure that that's the same finger, the same hand, the same side of your body. And the reason being, we all know that circulation can differ from side to side. So you just kind of want to take any variables out of the equation that we can. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm still
So
trying to get over the forehead pulse off thing. No.
yeah, I don't even have a picture of that, but now that you said that, I need to make sure that I take a picture of a patient with one and put it in there. I didn't even think about that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the additional requirement for oxygen prescription is that you have to have a face-to-face with the physician within 30 days of the prescription. They will not take, if you saw them 31 days ago, the oxygen company will come back and say, I'm not even going to submit it because insurance isn't going to pay. You need to see the patient, have the testing, and get the prescription all within a 30-day period. So we're very proactive with our patients. We actually give them a handout that says you have 30 days to get your oxygen. You need to call your insurance company, find out who your DME, who your provider is. Let us know so we can get this process going, because we don't want the delay. We don't want to be at day 28 and then find out that, oh my gosh, the patient doesn't have their oxygen yet. Now we're really on a time crunch. They've got to get their oxygen to them in the next 4 days. So if the oxygen company acknowledges the receipt, you would think that would be appropriate for the 30-day rule. It is not. According to the oxygen companies, that has to be, the delivery has to be 30 days within. If your liter flow is greater than 4 liters per minute, you actually have to have documentation of a low oxygen level when you're on 4 liters in order for them to pay for oxygen above 4 liters. So what am I talking about? I don't have that here. We're going to get into the high flow here in a few minutes. So if the qualifications aren't met, it's an automatic, it's going to go back to your doctor's office, and they're going to say you need to see your patient and test again in order to get the oxygen started. So what are their options? Everybody's seen the aluminum tanks that everybody hates. I will tell you that they used to be much, much heavier, and they used to be a lot more cumbersome than they are today. They have improved, but they are still large tanks. It's just the way it is. They could demand conservers that puff as you inhale will actually conserve that oxygen tank so you can use a smaller tank and they'll last longer. There are some drawbacks to that we'll get into in just a second, but they are available to help extend the life of your oxygen tank. Portable concentrators, tons of questions about portable concentrators, but they can be either demand or continuous flow. You need to know the difference, and your doctor needs to let you know what number difference you need when you're on it. Self-fill oxygen is a little more tricky. So those are the concentrators that you have at home, the large concentrators. You hook your own tank up to the top of the concentrator and you fill that tank with your concentrator. The DME companies, the oxygen companies love it because they drop off 2 tanks and your concentrator and they say, see ya, have a great day. And they still get to charge their monthly charge. There are some problems with that, and we'll get into that in just a moment. The thing to realize is that if you're filling your own tanks, you are filling with whatever that concentrator can concentrate to. A working oxygen concentrator can be as low as 86% oxygen. If your oxygen company is filling your tanks and bringing it to you, then that's 100% oxygen. Now that difference is not a big deal if you're on 2 liters. If, however, you need 6 liters or 10 liters, you can see where that would exponentially be worse for you. If you're only getting 86% at 10 liters versus 100% at 10 liters, that's going to be a fairly large deficit for you. So we kind of have to look at that and play the pros versus cons. So the high flows are challenging. Liquid oxygen is less and less available to our patients, although it is extremely necessary, and we are constantly battling with Washington to try to get access for our patients. If your oxygen need is greater than 5 liters, and this part cracks me up, the prescription actually has to say high liter concentrator, high flow concentrator, or 10-liter concentrator, or 6-liter concentrator. Just because we say, yes, they need 5 liters with exercise, doesn't mean that they are going to provide you the appropriate size concentrator for home. Totally counterintuitive. I would assume that if we wrote an order that said 5 liters, they're going to give you equipment that provides 5 liters. We've found that that's not necessarily the case. And we want you as patients to be aware, if you don't have the device that you need at home, you need to reach out to your doctor's office. You need to say, hey, this is what they brought me. I thought you said you wanted me on 6 liters when I'm up moving around, but this doesn't give me that ability. What am I supposed to do? And get them involved, because many times we don't even know that that's happening. The patient shows up, they're not doing well on their therapy, they're using their oxygen when they show up, so we are just baffled. And then we find out their home concentrator only goes to 3 liters per minute. So those things happen. You just have to be your own advocate for those type of things. So the tough question is, how can I get the highest liter flow with still having the most portability as I can? Unfortunately, we haven't seen a great correlation as of yet, but that being said, we all know that they're working really hard with wearable technology and trying to make it a lot more accurate. What I typically tell my patients is that they're great if you're looking at the trend. If you're looking at the trend and you're going, okay, this is making sense when I'm walking on my treadmill at 2 miles an hour, my oxygen level through my Fitbit or Garmin is dropping to 84%. That makes sense. If, however, you are walking on the treadmill and it's saying that you're 100% and you're not wearing your oxygen, that's a little suspect. So I do the same cautions with the portable oxygen, or with the went blank. I do the same cautions with the regular pulse oximeters. I just want to make sure that what you're feeling, what you're seeing is correct. The second part of that is, yes, if you're using it as a trend and you trend that you're not your oxygen level is not dropping, that's great. But that's again why we bring you in and do testing here, because we know that our equipment is accurate. We know what it's reading. If the patient comes in here and it's showing that they need, and this just happened recently, 8 liters when they're exercising, and they're telling us, oh no, my Garmin tells me I never drop below 93. And I'm going, okay, in the first 45 seconds, you drop down into the low 80s. So something isn't matching up. Those are things that you just need to work out. Like I said, as a trend, it's great. If you're looking for that acute issue, sometimes that becomes a little more challenging. And like I said, a lot of the time, it just has to do with what your background is. What is your skin tone? What are your nails painted? Do you have good circulation? The other part that kind of gets a little bit hinky with the watches, and you can see I'm a Fitbit person, but if I wear my watch where I normally wear my watch, my heart rate's totally off. You're supposed to be wearing it above that bone so that it sits a little bit higher. And I would have never in a million years worn a watch there. So that took forever for me to get used to. That is one of the challenges. but we know that any technology has its challenges. If a patient comes to me and they say, well, I can only afford one of these, I'm going to probably lean towards the wearable watch and just tell them that we're going to have to be double checking their numbers. Reason being, you do get more information. You can get sleep information from some of the wearables. You can get oxygenation. You can get heart rate. Some of them will sense if you're an AFib or if you have an irregular heartbeat. There's a lot of other benefits to the wearable than just oxygen. So I don't let that dissuade me that that may not be exactly where I want it yet. I'd say, let's do it and let's compare. And honestly, we've done probably 50-50 with the wearables. Our patients come in, they wear our pulse ox. Sometimes it's actually way more accurate than we suspected, and sometimes it's off. And why it's off can be any number of things, but we just need to realize that they have their limitations. Well, let's go on down here because yes, we need to know about conservers and continuous flow and all of that stuff. But here is my big takeaway. So conserver technology is different. There are all types of conservers. Some of them are pneumatic. It entirely triggers from sensing your breath. And so it will actually pulse and give you a standard amount when you breathe in. These are the ones that have 2 ports. So one is an inspiratory port, one is an exhalation port. And so if you're ever looking and going, I don't know, is it electric, is it pneumatic, who knows? That's one of your takeaways there. It's usually pneumatic and has 2 ports. Electric is intermittent breath. So the electric is not my favorite because it usually has 4 settings. Setting 1 gives you 1 puff out of 4. 2 gives you a puff every other. 3 gives you 3 puffs out of 4, and 4 gives you every breath. It has a fixed amount that it's delivering to you every time. So if that isn't enough for you, then it's not very helpful. And then the second part is if it's only giving you 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, your automatic body response is to breathe faster. And that could lead to hyperventilation in addition to not having enough oxygen. So you've kind of got a lot of components there. The every breath delivery actually has a solenoid inside, and the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many settings there are, actually opens it for a length of time based on that number. And that could vary by any manufacturer. So while one of them is going to open and deliver 16 puffs or 16 mLs, the next one is going to open on number 1 and give you 24 mLs or 36 mLs. They all vary, and there's no way that your office provider would have the ability to be able to test you on all of those options. So for that reason, a lot of times we ask that the oxygen company go ahead and sorry, I went backwards. We ask your oxygen company go ahead and test you on what they're going to give you so that we know and you know what number do I need to be set at with that conserving device and still be able to keep my oxygen levels up. So this is just a little diagram letting you know about tanks and the pulse dose versus continuous flow. Now you see that the different heads of the pulse dose obviously are going to make your tanks last way longer. So the M4 is this little tiny one down here in the corner. I apologize, but it is. So that's this one. Everybody usually prefers the D tank because it's a little thinner, it's a little more backpack ready, and it's not quite as thick and squatty. But you can see here that the hour usage is extremely higher for the pulse dose versus continuous flow. As long as the pulse flow keeps your oxygen level up, I don't care. That's the main thing. If you have to have a number 6 on pulse flow and you normally just use 1 liter per minute continuous flow, that's fine. That doesn't make any difference to us as a provider. What makes the difference is what is your oxygen level doing? Again, if somebody is purchasing their own, a lot of times we will guide them to make sure that they have a 60-day or a 30-day return policy. And we will actually bring them in and let them use theirs while we're monitoring them to see if it's something that's sufficient or not. So portable concentrators or self-fill. So portable concentrators, there are a ton of them on the market now. I think we're up to 22 or 24 of them. We'll get into a little bit of the specifics on that next. These are what the self-fill tanks look like. So you can see the bottom one is just basically your regular concentrator. And then what you do is put your tank on the top and fill it. Now, one of the things that you need to know is that, one of the things that you need to know is that while you're filling your tank, your little tank from your concentrator, your actual liter flow that you're receiving from the concentrator is going to drop. For instance, if you have a 10-liter concentrator and you're filling your little bitty tank and you've got it set to, for ease and convenience, we're going to say 9. And all of a sudden you're going, I just don't feel well when I'm filling my tanks. Well, while it's filling your tank, it's dropping a third of your flow that's coming to your nose.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So you've got it set on 9 and you're thinking, I'm good to go. And you're filling up your little bitty tank and you're really only getting 6 because the other 3 liters per minute is going into your tank. That's not widely known, unfortunately, and it's not. We've gotten away from the oxygen companies having respiratory therapists that are going, out there and telling the patients and educating them. Unfortunately, that's kind of gone more towards a delivery driver, dropping it off and saying, this is how you connect it up. And that's really the education you get. So I like people to know that. The second part is I've had people come in and tell me that they, for their spouse, are hooking them up and having them and filling their tanks while they're sleeping. Again, it still drops that oxygen level or the oxygen flow. So you just want to be careful and make sure that if somebody's helping you out by doing that for you, that it's at a time when your body isn't needing a ton more oxygen. So not moving around, that kind of stuff. So this slide is going to tell us about some portable concentrators that will give you continuous flow. Now, I know this is kind of tiny and kind of blurry, but all of these oxygen concentrators do deliver continuous flow oxygen. It's written here how many liters flow that it provides. So you can see the highest liter flow that any of the portable concentrators provide is 3 liters. That's important for a couple reasons. First of all, the oxygen company who is widely advertised on TV, who says, oh, we can give you up to 10 liters. Nope, they can't. They can maybe give you, well, actually they say 6 now that I think about it, but what they're saying is they have up to a number 6 pulse flow. That's not 6 liters. So as to your discussion while we were trying to set up, yes, you look at the battery lives. So the reason I like this particular diagram that took me forever to put together is that you can see if you're using your oxygen with continuous flow, 1 liter, your battery is going to last 4 hours. Now, most people are not using 1 liter, and we're aware of that. So if you're looking at 3 liters per minute, this particular, the iGo, is going to last 1.6 hours. If, however, you're using your pulse setting, then you can come down here and see that on a pulse setting of 2, it's going to last you 5 hours. So what do the majority of my patients do? What I advise is that I like them to turn it to continuous flow when they're up and moving. And if you're going to the grocery store cart and you're going to ride, then go ahead and turn it to pulse, as long as it keeps your oxygen levels up. That will conserve while still being able to get out and about. Because our purpose is, as Kira and I were talking, our purpose is not to make you homebound and not be able to get up and move. Our purpose is to give you quality of life and longevity at the same time. So
Tonya, I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead. No, you finish, and then I'll catch up.
Well, so these are the ones, and I'm happy to distribute these to the group. That's not a problem, so that you can actually see them. But I like people to know all of this information, but the real information down here is at the bottom. The maximum oxygen capacity, the most that this machine can produce, is 3,000 milliliters or 3 liters per minute. This little maximum breath down on the bottom, if you hit that maximum breath, the machine will either error an alarm or it will shut off entirely. That is not a malfunction in the machine. That is how the machine is built. So again, when I was talking earlier about respiratory rate, if you are somebody that you catch yourself breathing really fast when you get short of breath, one of these that has the high breaths, you can't exceed that amount of breaths per minute. That's not for you. If you are looking at something like the SQL Eclipse that has all of these great settings, it goes up to, I believe, 9 settings, 12 settings, something like that, which is fantastic. You'd think that's really wonderful. Well, you scroll down here and you see it can still only produce 3 liters per minute. So if you have it set to number 10, and it's supposed to be giving you 192 mLs per puff on pulse flow, if you exceed 10 breaths per minute, yes, 10, it will shut off because it's exceeded what it can actually produce. And again, the POC company is not going to tell you that. They're not going to say, oh yeah, by the way, I know that when you get short of breath, you breathe faster, but that's going to work against you. That's not how that works. So I just like everybody to realize what the actual capabilities of the machines are, which is why I spent a lot of my personal time going through their manufacturer booklets and finding all of this information and populating it. What I prefer is liquid. If you're above 3 liters, I prefer liquid. It's got its own drawbacks, and one of which is that it's really hard to get. A lot of companies won't carry it. A lot of companies that were carrying it have stopped, and they're just basically leaving the patients high and dry and saying they have no option. They need a gas tank. The second option that I would have would be one of the small gas tanks. And as I said, turn it up if when you're up moving. If your oxygen level can handle it, turn it to pulse flow when you're sitting to conserve that tank. Third option that I would have is a different conserver device, which I'm going to show you in a minute. It can actually decrease your requirement by having basically a holding place for the oxygen as you're breathing in and out. So sometimes patients can get by with 3 liters continuous flow as long as they have that particular conserving device.
Tonya, my question was, and I'm trying to figure out where to raise the hand thing is, so I don't keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just going to do this thing right here.
Okay. I got you.
Thank you. I do have the conserver with the dual tubing thing. When I came from portable to tanks, you know, I was one of the people who maybe some of the people on the line are like that too. I did not really want tanks. But this, I got to the point where, you know, even with the portable, I live in Brooklyn. I would walk a block and then all of a sudden was on the highest that they had. It would last me like an hour. But, and again, you know, quality of life was going to be out most times for an hour. Why do you think? Okay, when I came to tanks, it was like, oh, goodness, thank goodness. Why do you think people have so much trouble when when obviously tanks are going to be a better solution for them? And especially, is it because they feel like, okay, the disease is progressing, or do they feel like it's too heavy? Or why are they so against the tanks? Is it because they don't want anyone to see them with tanks?
So all of the above. Probably the most frequent thing that I get is that, you know, because people will tell me they're heavy, my back can't handle it. I give them options like, okay, let's look at a little carrier that you can roll. Let's look at, you know, all these other different things. And of course, they come back with, well, no, that's not going to work because um, I think there's a stigma that goes with oxygen that patients don't want it known, quote unquote. They don't want to appear disabled. And I think in a lot of cases, there's enough people out there with the portable oxygen concentrators that they don't view that as being a bigger, as big of an issue as oxygen tanks. I think that a lot of people, especially these little tiny ones that you can attach to your belt, that I'm not a big fan of, just a little sidebar, but they, in a lot of cases, can be hidden. You know, they have these great ads where, you know, grandpa's out there playing ball with Johnny and he's got this little thing on his waist and he can go and enjoy his grandson. But they don't have those same ads for oxygen tanks. And a lot of times it's really seen as a quality of life issue. It shouldn't be. I have been doing this for a hot minute, and I was that person going, okay, let's see what we can do. How can we? I had a patient who was an avid hunter and fisherman, and he would routinely go out to wherever and climb trees with his oxygen. And I'm like, dude, no, let's figure this out. The beauty of this is that we have come so far in treatment that now our patients are having back their lives. Am I going to be the one to say you can't have it back because of something as pesky as oxygen? No, I'm going to try to find an answer. So in his case, liquid was the answer. And he put what I lovingly term as a pony keg on the back of his truck. And he would just make sure that when he was up in the stand, he'd have it on pulse flow. And when he came down, he always had a buddy with him. So if he did shoot something, he didn't try to drag it out himself. But he would just refill when he needed to. We've got patients that are musicians that in one case, one of our patients is a DJ and she has the E cylinders, the tall ones, and she calls it her buddy and she decorates it with like neon and stuff like that. She's DJ. That's what she does. So people just look at her now and go, that's just her. That's just her. That's what she is or who she is. You can either embrace it or you can fight it, but it's not going to go away regardless. So
It's really not. I mean, like I put T-shirts on mine. Those have, you know what? I feel like it's naked. And
yeah, I've had people name them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mercy and Grace. Those are my two. This is my thing. It's not going to go away. So have fun with it. I put mine on. I have the two tank party thing. That puppy has bumped down subway steps, gone on buses, gone to museums, been to the movies. Was my date and was like such a cheap date. So I mean, you know, to carry. Yeah, you don't have to worry about feeding it or anything, you know. But
it always goes home with you.
It always goes home with you. Doesn't bother you. It's a wonderful thing. But I feel that a lot of people do that. And I feel that it is hard for people to go transition from portable
concentrators to tanks. And I think the other part of that is just the acceptance of this is going to be my buddy and this isn't going anywhere. And once I get people to try the tanks, I've had people that have complained to me. I actually had somebody, he was going on a cruise and I misunderstood what he was asking for. He needed 4 liters. And he said, I need a portable so that I can go out on these day trips. And I'm thinking, I don't really want him on a POC, but I want him to live. I want him to enjoy. So we kind of hashed it out with he wouldn't be away more than 2 hours, blah, blah, blah. So I do all of the paperwork for him to go on this cruise. And he calls me back and he's like, Tonya, you made an error. You gave me a portable concentrator. I can't use a portable concentrator. I need my tanks. And I'm like, oh, sweet baby Jesus. I cannot believe I've actually had someone that said, no, 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 don't give me that POC. And basically, he found out that once he started on regular oxygen, he felt so much better that he said it was night and day. So in his mind, he's like, why would I go back to something that's not working? And I apologized profusely. I said, I totally misunderstood you. I thought you were, and he said portable option. So I thought he meant portable concentrator. He just said portable tanks. He needed them so that they would deliver them to the cruise ship. That was all he needed. So, the little things like that are kind of wins in my eyes. And I think that's one of the reasons that our patients are thriving for so long. And it's unbelievably important to know that.
Okay, and then I
So-
have a question.
Sure.
I'm personally on 5 liters of oxygen, but I have a portable unit for when I leave. It's a plug-in pulse ox that can go up to, I think, 6. Should I be on liquid oxygen or some other form of oxygen instead of my portable?
What is your oxygen level when that's happening? When you're on your portable tank, have you checked your actual finger probe, your pulse ox?
No.
No, that's craziness. I would recommend you do that. If your oxygen level is above 90, no harm, no foul. You're good. If you are walking through Walmart and you find out that, oh crap, I'm dropping down to the mid 80s, this is a problem, then yeah, you probably do need a different form. The other thing to look at, as I said before, is that even with these pulse flow, you look at the settings and what the settings mean. So you would look at, say, this Inogen 1G2, a setting of 6 is only 37 mLs when you inhale. It's only capable of producing less than 1 liter per minute. So if you do the math, and I know a lot of people don't like mathing, but I do. But if you do the math, you can see that that can be really challenging before it starts alarming. If you look at a different device and you look over here at, say, the Evergo, on a setting of 6, you're getting 52 mLs every time you breathe in. So it may be that whatever one you're using may not be giving you enough on the inspiratory side, and there may be something else pulse flow that will work. But just be aware it's not the same as liters per minute. And I think you're aware of that because you had said, well, I use 5 and I use 6 for the other. But I would really strongly recommend you just go ahead and test it and just see, because it may hold you. A lot of my patients, it doesn't. But I'm all for it. If it does and you're comfortable with it, then I think it's a win. But definitely look into what the peak amount that they can create is, because that's huge to whether or not it's going to shut down or alarm on you.
Okay, and I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One from Linda. What do you suggest people, how do you suggest somebody with a large portable concentrator manages that in like tight seatings, like a theater or, even some restaurants?
Yeah, unfortunately, the best option is really table instead of booth, because you have a little more room next to you. The second thing is what I typically do. I like them when they're on wheels personally, and I use it. I was in a wheelchair for a couple of years. I use it like my wheelchair. I'm like, okay, my purse is on it, whatever. It's going to sit right here next to me. No big deal. I've not, I had a grandmother who was on oxygen. We used it the same way. We just took it, set it next to her, just like it was a person, and went on. And most of the time people understand. I don't recall any time recently in the last several years that I've had anyone say, oh, hey, let me take that and go put it over here in the corner for you. And if they do, you just look at them and say, I think not. It's fine right here. Thanks. Again, you are your advocate. You are the one in charge. As hard as that is for the majority of us who want to be people pleasers and say, oh, there's not a lot of room, I don't know. You have just as much right to breathe and be comfortable and to that space as anybody. So realize it and own it. That's really kind of one of my huge takeaways. This is a
What
disease where
about
you've
like
got it.
issues, like situations like when you're on an airplane, or in Linda's case, Broadway theater seats? Like, what do you do with your oxygen then?
If it can be kind of shoved underneath the seat, obviously in the airplane, that's always their thing. Most of the time, I'm trying to think of the recent flights that I've been on, there has been at least a empty seat somewhere. So if you explain to the flight attendant, actually, they don't go by that anymore. I'm not sure what they call themselves. But if you explain to that person that, you've got this piece of equipment, you have to use it on takeoff, on landing, and you have your note from your physician, then most of the time they'll try to accommodate that. It may mean moving seats. It may mean not being in a seat that reclines or that other people might view as less comfortable. But if you can have your oxygen, you're going to be way more comfortable than if you can recline a little bit. So I would say, just again, I've never had them say that they needed to buy an extra seat to take that space. Always try to get on the end of any place. You don't want to be on that plane, you don't want to be on the window side because there's very little extra space. In Broadway seats, I would definitely look for an end row, end of the row, so that and if you're really lucky, you can maybe take the second seat in, and the person next to you is nice enough to go, oh, you know what? Let me go ahead and slide over and give you a little more room. So I wish I could say I had a whole lot better answer for that. But again, it's just kind of a trial and error. The Broadway seats, maybe if you're a season holder, maybe then you'll have a little more options too. I see you, Lenise.
You know what, for Broadway, I've noticed that a lot of the theaters have handicap seating.
Oh, that's
And
true.
because I have the tanks, they're on a stand. So when I book my seats, I book them for handicap seating because they're also made too for the wheelchair, so you have more room.
That is absolutely true. I appreciate that. You are absolutely correct. And you can, I think, do the same thing for airplanes, but airplanes, they delineate certain aisles. So again, you don't have the pick of your seat. If you pick a handicap seat, then it's usually one that they've designated. As I said, I will send these back over to Lenise and Kira, and they can distribute it to people as well. So the G5 does have up to a number 6, but again, your take home is that's not 6 liters, that's a number 6. And if you look down here, they are very specific about their settings and what it delivers, but only if this is your maximum breaths per minute.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
get that a lot where people will show up and that they're like, oh, my machine's broken. And they're huffing and puffing at 30 breaths a minute, and it's alarming right and left. The other part of that is if it doesn't sense your breath, if you have a low inspiratory force and it doesn't sense you, then it's not going to fire. That happens with people if you are a mouth breather and you're talking, and then all of a sudden it's alarming because it hasn't sensed a breath, and it's saying, hey, there's a problem here. A lot of times in those cases, I'll actually have people move the cannula down to their mouth so that they, that it has a little bit easier time sensing. I used to be grossed out by it. Now I'm just like, this is what you got to do. So that's kind of my take home with the Inogens. And again, the other thing to realize with any of the POCs, they can legally be down to 87% of the concentrated oxygen. It's not the same as 100%. So if you just need 2 liters, 3 liters, it's sometimes not that big a deal. But if you need more than that, then sometimes it can be really significant. So the home fill systems, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, other than the fact that you note the filling times. For that length of time, as I said, you're going to be getting a third less of the flow from the concentrator. So you just need to be aware. That's going to be your sitting quietly in your recliner time if you're going to fill your tank. So demand is different on all the oxygen systems. That's first and foremost. The POCs, even the portable concentrators that are all from the same manufacturer, don't necessarily have the same amount per inspiration. So you really have to pay close attention to your home oximeter to make sure that you're getting what you need. And as I said, if you need to turn it up to 6 and you normally at home use 2 liters, that's what you got to do in order to keep that oxygen level up. But that's your take home message. You've got to keep the oxygen level up. If you're purchasing the POC, you want to be aware that some companies do offer a 30-day trial, and you want to take advantage of that. Whether that's you calling your doctor's office and saying, hey, I'm buying this. Can I come in and just walk the halls and see what you're showing versus what I'm showing? Or if you're going to have a test run with your own oximeter, that's all fine. But you just need to make sure that what you're getting is going to work, because otherwise it's really costly and disappointing. When you call me and you say, I've had a patient call me and say they bought 3 concentrators because each time they called this company, they were like, oh yeah, that one doesn't provide you what you need. Let me give you this one instead. And give means pay for another one. And by the end of the day, he had 3 portable concentrators he couldn't use any of. So it's very, very disappointing. So you definitely want to look at your continuous flow. If you are on pulse flow and you have that option of continuous flow, if you are short of breath, it may be beneficial to turn yourself to 2 liters continuous or 3 liters continuous instead of number 6 pulse. You just need to be aware that that lower number on continuous may be giving you a higher amount of oxygen than pulse on the higher numbers. If you're using a CPAP, BiPAP, a ventilator at night, it's got to have continuous flow. If you think about those devices, they're going to be an enclosed system. So you can't have a CPAP or a BiPAP and have an open end. Well, if you put your pulse flow machine into that line, it looks at it as an open end. So you're going to end up with both the CPAP, BiPAP, or ventilator alarming, as well as the oxygen alarming. So you want to just make sure, and I will tell you that oxygen companies may or may not actually bring that to your attention. So I actually have some issues sometimes with coworkers that forget, and somebody will call in and say, hey, I'm flying, I need this POC, and they forget to ask, well, are you sleeping with a piece of equipment that you're going to be using, or are you going to have a concentrator delivered to you when you get there? Those are all viable options, but you just need to know that it's not going to work for you to sleep with a assistant with a different device. Again, consider what you need in your doctor's office. If you just need low flow, you may be fine. If you need a higher flow, you need to take a closer look and just make sure that what you're getting is going to work for you. Look at the amount that it can produce. Again, I'm not going to beat a dead rabbit, but or horse. But you want to make sure too that if you're paying for it, that you're getting something you can definitely use. What if you need more than 3 liters? This is for you, Kira. So the tanks don't last very long. People hate them because they say they're cumbersome. The POCs might work on a continuous flow if you have a different conserver model, and I'll show you that in just a second. And the self-fill systems, again, I really caution people to make sure that they're getting what they need all the time, even when they're filling their tanks. Liquid oxygen does have the ability to give you up to 15 liters per minute, continuous flow. Couple of issues is, again, the oxygen companies don't want to pay for it. They don't want to provide it to our patients. The second thing is that the 15 liter per minute reservoir that had been used forever, unfortunately, is no longer mass produced. So a lot of the ones that people are getting are the ones that have been refurbished. And as they break down, the oxygen companies aren't replacing them. So this is what I was talking to Kira about earlier. So the oxy mask is a bizarre device because you see this little triangle here. That's actually how it works. It uses that triad to go right in between your nose and your mouth, and it provides a continuous flow. It doesn't look like it should work. If you look at this mask, it's got a bunch of holes in it, and you're thinking, no way, how's that? That's not going to do anything for me. I cannot tell you how anti this mask I was when the rep brought it into me. I will tell you that our patients now, 9 out of 10 of them, if they are on high flow, they're getting prescribed the oxy mask. Because what we've found is that with that little triad, as I like to call it, the patients are actually using anywhere from 2/3 to a half of what their other necessary later flow is. What that
Tonya,
means.
what do you consider high flow?
High flow is actually considered anything over 6 liters. But if you're looking at it in the concentrator realm, it's anything over 5 liters. If a patient needs 5 liters, I am typically still prescribing a high flow concentrator for home, which is a 10-liter concentrator. Otherwise, they get a 4-liter concentrator and they don't get what they need. It's crazy.
Is this the one that they use on planes? Like, we had a support group on travel. And this looks like one that, because, I think, okay, I'm on the tank. So when I go on a plane, they won't let me take my tank. So I have to use the portable. Is this the same type of mask?
No, I'm sorry. This mask actually needs a continuous flow. So it's very rare that this would be on a portable concentrator unless you're on a portable concentrator that provides continuous flow. The reason being, if this were pulse flow, it would be pulsing and it would not actually clear the tube to give you what you need. So that's the reason any of these would have to be continuous flow.
Okay.
These other two, the pendant oxidizer and the mustache oxidizer, are ones that actually have little holding areas for oxygen, and they actually contain baffles. So as you inhale, that baffle sucks in, and as you exhale, it goes back out. Again, it's basically conserving because it's keeping on hand what you need. It has to be used with continuous flow, though. You can't use it with pulse flow, which again is a huge drawback when you're looking at battery life. So again, this is all things that we were just talking about. Can't be used with pulse flow devices. Oddly, You shouldn't use it with humidity coming from your concentrator, but you also want to be a little bit cautious if you're getting into the shower with not so much the oxy mask, but if you're getting in the shower with the other two that have the reservoirs, you could actually get a little bit too much humidity in there and get a little bit of bacterial growth. A lot of the DME companies don't want to carry these because they are more expensive than just throwing a couple cannulas at you. And it has to be actually prescribed as the delivery device. So your doctor's office, if they said, I need my patient to have 3 liters per minute with a mask, what they're going to give you is a low cost, simple mask that's not going to work in the same way as the oxy mask does. So when we prescribe this, we actually have to get down and dirty, very specific. Patient requires 3 liters per minute via South Medic oxy mask, because there is no gray zone when you spell it out for them. What's happened in the past is we would say oxy mask and they'd go, oh, we thought that was just a regular oxygen mask. I had a patient who was doing very well with his oxy mask and he was on 10 liters. And he called me and said, I can't get my oxygen level above 82. I don't know what's going on. My oxygen's still the same. Nothing has changed. I'm on my 10-liter concentrator. I just don't understand. Well, after going back and forth, we realized that he had gotten a new delivery of masks. And he just assumed it was the same type of mask and put it on, and it was a simple mask. And with that mask, he was actually requiring about 15 liters, which he couldn't get. So he ended up in our emergency room, which of course I ran him over the oxy mask and his oxygen levels came right back up. He went home on his 10 liters and was fine, to which I responded by being very not nice to the DME company and explaining that they do not have the right to change a physician order, and that physician order was not for a simple mask. Again, he had no idea that he needed to reach out and say, this mask looks different. But thankfully, he did reach out when it didn't work and say, something's going on. If you are tested with the oxy mask or any of these type of conserving devices, your liter flow is what you test on. So in other words, if say you came to me and you said, oh, I use 6 liters per minute, and you were tested with the oxy mask, and we ordered 6 liters per minute via oxy mask, in many cases, the oxygen company would call me back and say, oh, but you didn't realize you can cut that by 25% because you're using the conserver device. Which is true if we were just testing you with nasal oxygen and switching you to the oxy mask. But if you're tested with it, then that's actually what you need. So that's just another little sideline that you as a patient may run into. You know how you were tested and you know what you needed when you were tested. So that, again, is a huge, you have to be your own advocate. As I said before, if you're tested with a cannula and you're going to one of these devices, it can actually decrease your need by 25 to 50%. So, Kira, this is what I was talking about when we were talking about the conserving device. But again, it's got to be continuous flow. So it's kind of a sucky answer, for lack of a better term. We do like the patients to be titrated on whatever it is. And again, it goes back to they all have a little bit different response depending on your tidal volume, how big a breath you're taking, what your speed of your breaths are, all of that kind of thing. The last thing I want to talk about is the transtracheal oxygen. This is something that you may or may not have seen. It was developed in the early 80s. It essentially is where they put the oxygen cannula straight into your trachea. So instead of having the nasal cannula in your nose, they actually insert it right into your neck area. It was wonderful because it bypasses all of this dead space. It does have a little bit of, well, it has a lot of challenges, but one of which is that because if you think about it, you're bypassing your nose and your mouth, which is where the humidity and filtering comes from. and you're going straight into your trachea, which then made people cough. That just was the way it works. It did decrease their oxygen needs, so the high flow patients suddenly didn't need as high a flow. However, there were all kinds of little challenges, like who was going to insert it, who was going to change out the actual cannula, when was it going to get changed out, who was paying for those supplies. And if the DME companies thought that our masks were expensive, they really found out what expense was when we started doing the transtracheal. It's not done very much anymore, mainly because patients can't find anyone to maintain that for them, because it's usually an ear, nose, throat specialist, not a pulmonologist. And then the second part is that it has some drawbacks as far as cleanliness as well, and potential illness. Yes, Lenise?
Who would need something like this? I mean, like, what kind of condition would you be in? How many liters? Is it like a certain amount of liters that you would have to need to even, this be thought of?
Yeah, when we were doing this way back when, it was usually patients that needed 10 liters or more. If they needed, some of our patients need up to 25 liters. And by using this, we could cut their liter flow to 10. So it was a win, but at the same time, it was very, very challenging to keep this kind of a thing up for them.
Linda says that she had a trach tube for a year. Is it similar to that?
Very similar, actually, good call. It is like a mini trach. And then what they do is take the mini trach, the actual part that holds it open out, and they put the cannula in. So that's the portion that gets changed every week and gets cleaned, or gets changed every month, but it gets cleaned every week or more. But it's very similar to the trach. You are absolutely correct. So what do high flow users need to know? Got to know that the pulse isn't the same as continuous, and that for portable use, the liquid getting 100% oxygen is far more effective for patients than using portable concentrators or filling your own tanks. So this is actually what I lovingly refer to as the pony keg, because that's what it reminds me of. But patients will actually hook their liquid reservoir onto here and fill it. The other problem with liquid is that it will evaporate. So it's not something that you could fill your tank. If you knew you had an appointment the next morning, you could fill it the night before, because by the time you got up to use it the next morning, it would be evaporated. So it definitely has its place, but it has its own little quirks that people need to be aware of as well. So how long will the high flow last? This is basically what we consider high flow, to your question, Kira. So if you are looking at 4 liters per minute, and these are all continuous flow, if you have the D cylinders and the dual setting, like Lenise was talking about, that could last you 3.4 hours versus the E cylinders, 2.7. Just has to do with I think that's backwards, just so y'all know. Because the E, because you've got dual. I lied. So the single E cylinder is what they're saying would last 2.7 versus 2 of the D cylinders. The high flow liquids, which is that and this, both will last you about 4.4 hours. So you can see that that's a huge benefit with length of time, but a lot of times between the weight of the liquid as well as the inconveniences of it, or the physical demands of filling it, can actually shift the patients that it's appropriate for. So I want everybody to be aware that it can be really time consuming and frustrating, but you can achieve some answers to the difficult oxygen issues. It is totally a work between your oxygen company, you, and your physician. We know if it's not comfortable, if you don't feel like it's doing anything for you, you're not going to use it. And we totally understand that. But in many cases, if it's ineffective and really what you're doing is carrying around something that's not working for you, it's actually putting more stress on you than it is giving you benefit. So you just got to really work together to make a viable action plan. Take home messages: no POC will go higher than 3 liters per minute. That's all that they are capable of producing. When I asked years ago the manufacturer of Sequel why 3 was their top number, the answer that I got was that if they were to make it hot so that it would provide more than 3 liters, it would be too heavy and cumbersome for a patient to want to use. And I get that. I know people are hard pressed to want to use the Sequel or its counterpart because they just feel like it's too heavy and it's another person. But at the same time, you've got to do what you need to keep yourself functional. Again, if you're using a demand piece of equipment that does have the ability to go to continuous flow, you want to be aware that you may need to turn it to continuous flow, even if that number on the dial is less. And always let your provider know if you're filling your portables at home. We found that because the tanks look identical to the tanks that are delivered to you, the only real reason that came to light was that our patients were coming in, their oxygen levels weren't holding. We put them on our tank and they were perfect. And we were like, something's up with this. So now we ask, if we have a patient with a regular tank, we'll say, are you having these delivered to you or are you filling these at home? So really important piece of information. And that's it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anybody have questions, comments? I heard somebody say I'm not
That's
sure.
a very truthful answer.
You know what? Okay.
I don't know what I don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Well, you know
Yep.
what? Was there anything in particular that you were interested in, or was it like a lot? It was, first off, it was incredibly informative because some of these things I wrote down, I had no idea. I thank the person who asked the question about the forehead pulse ox, because I had never heard of that. And the oxygen flow drops while filling the tank. Okay, that explains that little issue I have. And take advantage of the 30-day trial, because you don't want to be stuck with something like I was stuck with something you didn't need.
Yep.
The CPAP, BiPAP needs continuous flow.
I cannot tell you how many PHA conferences I've attended, and people have sat down to ask me about why their concentrator wasn't working. Or they tell me, oh, I'm exhausted because my machine was alarming all night. I'm like, let me guess, you use a CPAP. Yep. And you don't have anything other than your portable concentrator. Nope. It's like, okay, let's see if we can get that rectified. And I have actually done that at conferences where I've intervened on the behalf of the patient and just said, no, they need to have something that they can actually use appropriately.
Hey, now I have a question with my tanks. When I fill my tanks, they don't go like, they go halfway, not even all the way halfway up. And I was told that I had to have my doctor write a prescription because I use usually 3 or 4 liters. That my prescription said 2. But if the doctor says 3 or 4, then
it's a whole new prescription.
That the oxygen would fill at least halfway up. No, what does that mean?
It just means that if they would give you more than 2 tanks, which is a big if, then
I
sometimes.
Have 5.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Because I will tell you, I've had fights over that. But it typically means that they would give you more tanks because they would know that you'd be going through it faster. I don't really know why it's only filling a half. They should still be filling to 2,200 pounds. If it's only going to 1,000, then I would actually check with your company and ask them why it's only filling to 1,000.
Okay.
Is it a time issue? Are you just stopping it, or is it telling you it's full?
Telling me it's full.
Yeah, so I would check with them and say, that's kind of hanky.
Okay, so it should go up to 200 and, wait, 2,200
2,200.
pounds. Okay.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
they deliver it at. So if it doesn't go to 2,200, I'd ask them why. Because the tanks that they deliver are, a full tank is 2,200 pounds of pressure.
Full tank.
Mhm.
So the full tank is 2,200. Okay, I will definitely call them today about this. Also too, it was very interesting to know that, you know, a lot of people get Inogens. I mean, I had mine. And I thought that the 6 on the number was the 6 liters. But no. Okay.
Yeah, we get that a lot. And the sad part is, I've actually gotten into some lively discussions with the people on the Inogen line as the patients are calling and they're being told, oh no, it's 6 liters. And in one case, he put me through to the person that he was talking to, and I said, okay, I've got your manual in front of me. What page tells me that you can create 6,000 mLs per minute? Because that's what 6 liters is. No, not you're dealing with people's lives. This is not a sales pitch. Oh, I get an extra bonus if I sell 22 of these versus 10. No, this is somebody's life. And, you know, I recently was scammed personally for something else, but that to me is the equivalent of a scam. They're telling you what you desperately want to hear, that you can have this little 5-pound portable concentrator and it's going to do wonders for you. But the truth is that they're salespeople. They are reading from a script. In some cases, I'm not going to be totally ugly as I want to be, but you know, in some cases, I don't even know that these are high school graduates. They're just reading from a script. They aren't healthcare professionals. They aren't medical professionals. And they're just telling you essentially, you know, oh yeah, I can fill that. I can do that. And it's in many cases not correct. So yeah, that's my little plug.
And you know, at least in the state, I believe it all over, but in the state of New York, oxygen is given according to Medicare guidelines, which means that you have to have 90 or below. However, some of us are never below 90, at least me. I'm never below 90, but I have congestive heart failure.
Yep, exactly.
And I have low blood. I can't think what the heck that is.
Anemia.
Thank you. So I'm never, ever. I mean, I just don't read like that. And thank God the insurance company that I have goes by medical necessity. So, but it was a fight. It was a fight to actually get oxygen.
And you have to know, your doctor's office has to know, obviously. And I've been doing this I've been here as a respiratory therapist for 33 years. And I've been doing pulmonary hypertension for over 20. And I routinely will have respiratory therapists that come to me and go, now wait a second. I got them to 89, but that's all I could do. Is that okay? And, you know, yeah, it takes a little bit of extra time to look up and say, oh, yep, they've got CHF. Yep, that's going to work. It just means that we have to revalidate earlier than a patient who gets to the other numbers. So
yeah, because you know, I mean, in the past I've had a doctor say, "Oh, well, your numbers are good. Take the oxygen out your nose." How about I strangle you with the cannula? But oh wait, this is recorded, right? I'm so sorry. Click, click, cut, cut. Oh my Lord. But you know, sometimes it is a fight. Sometimes it is a struggle. And luckily for me, I had 2 nurses fight for me. And I got my oxygen. And I have to say that when it comes between the portable and the tanks, my personal opinion, so much better.
Especially if you need the higher flow. That's huge. And like I said, if you need 2 liters or even 3 liters, it may not be a big issue to have that 16% difference in what you are getting. But if you're on 4 liters, 6 liters, 10 liters, then that change becomes huge. You have just exponentially made it worse. So,
Has anybody ever had someone tell them, "Oh, you can't be on oxygen too much because what is that called? They say you have too much oxygen."
yeah, there are patients that basically retain carbon dioxide.
Okay.
And those patients, if they have too much, then it basically puts them to sleep. It puts that respiratory drive out. It's a really small percentage of people that are that way, but that is a huge medical take home. That they're like, whoa, oh, you want to make sure you could have oxygen toxicity. You could have a CO2 retainer. You could have, and I'm like, and you could have somebody that you are constricting every single blood vessel in their body. And that is not appropriate.
That is not oxygen to me. I mean, I'm thankful for it.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's another medication.
It is. It is. And you know what? That's what people have to realize. It is a medication.
Yep.
It's a prescription. It's a prescribed drug. Does anybody else have a question? Okay.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No,
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And you keep saying you've been doing this for 30 years. Meanwhile, you look like a baby. But
Oh, thank you.
but thank you so much because honestly, I learned a lot. And
Awesome.
thank you, everybody for coming on. Our next meeting is in July. We have Chef Keisha coming back. Tonya, if you get to see her, she made sweet potato quesadilla. She cooked it in her kitchen, and I want that pan that she has. Great. But if you get to see her, I mean, really. So be aware. Go on teamphenomenalhope.org. I thank you all for coming on. I thank you for your questions. I thank you for your texts. Be well, be blessed, breathe good.